Hello, this is John Harrigan, Qi Gong Master and Immortality Coach. And today we're going to talk about habits of thinking, speaking, and acting, how habits create physical immortality. We'll talk about specifically what habits do create physical immortality, and conversely, what habits create death, suffering, and hardship. It's a very important lesson, and I'm going to be reading from and talking from a blog article that's below. You can find the link to it below this article, and the blog article is called Habits That Create Physical Immortality. We teach the secret to immortality, and it's a threefold process: mindfulness for immortality, Qi Gong for lasting life, and mentoring or coaching. You're getting mentoring and coaching in a way right now, but of course we offer it on a one-to-one personal basis. If you had a little experience with our course, with our introductory course in our book. But today, the article I wrote in my talk right now is going to focus on mindfulness for immortality. How do our thoughts, our physical behaviors, our speech create physical immortality, or conversely, death, suffering, disease, and hardship? So go below this article if you can. If you can't look at the blog article, that's okay, but it might help you if you can see it. So again, the blog article on my website is Habits That Create Physical Immortality. That's the blog article I'm going to be discussing. And the website, of course, is immortalnow.com. That's immortalnow.com. And I, again, am John Harrigan, Qi Gong Master and Immortality Coach, helping you today with habits that you need to know and understand to create and evolve physical immortality instead of death, hardship, and suffering. Quote, reading from the article right now. Excuse me. I'm reading from the article right now. Quote, physical form is created and sustained by habit. All of life is made by patterns repeating themselves, like our planets circling the sun and electrons orbiting an atom's core. Habits create both death and human immortality. The habits we create, the habits we repeat, create our fate. I'm going to read that once more from my article. The habits we create, dyslexia. The habits we repeat create our fate. The habits we repeat create our fate. And that's pretty obvious. You know, if you want to be good at anything, you have to have the habit of practice, the habit of improving yourself. If you want to be good at a sport, golf, I was a ski instructor. You have to practice and practice. I was a tennis player and a football player, and I've probably played, I don't know, thousands of hours of football and tennis together, and the same for swimming. We have to practice, and something we practice, something we repeat over and over, is a habit. Quote, habits create both death and human immortality. The habits we repeat create our fate. And a lot of our habits, if not most of our habits, are unconscious. We're not aware of them, and that's a good thing. To get through the day, we don't want to have to be aware of every movement we use to tie our shoe. We want it to be automatic. And I remember when I was doing a lot of mountain biking, I had these type of shoes and pedals on the bike that clip into the shoe. They hold into the bottom of it, of the shoe. And when I first got those, when I started to fall over, I would fall over with my feet still attached to those special clips on the bottom of my shoes. But in time, I created a habit, an automatic response where my feet, without thinking, my feet would turn and get out of those pedals. And that's a habit, and that was a good habit. It probably saved me from breaking some bones over the course of ownership with that bicycle in my mountain biking. Here comes the sun. I'm reading from my article below this webcam. A habit is a thought or action that repeats and repeats. Physical form is created and sustained by habit. What does that mean? Physical form is created and sustained by habit. What it means is our habits of behavior, of thinking, of action, and the habits of all of life, all existence, together, what creation is doing is creating creation. I'm suggesting to you in the secret of immortality, I'll be suggesting again and again that we are the creation. As we become more and more aware, you'll be more aware that you are the creation. When we're on a mountain or watching a beautiful sunset, most of us are aware that we're part of that sunset or part of that beautiful mountain environment. We can feel something special, a greater presence, a greater importance. Maybe for an atheist, they would just describe that as nature itself, but they feel a belonging, a greatness. I use the term higher power mostly, but I'm from a Christian metaphysical background where I'm comfortable with Christian thoughts, but I'm also comfortable with all religious thoughts, and I'm also comfortable working with atheists or agnostics. It really doesn't matter. Part of the immortality process is slowly connecting within yourself and to the world and understanding that you're something greater than this simple human being that you may have thought you were. That we have more connectivity within ourselves to give us power, calm, and strength, and that by doing Qi Gong and by practicing the right thoughts, the right speech, and the right actions, mindfulness for immortality, by practicing that, we slowly or very quickly sometimes gain an awareness, a belonging to all the world, all creation, all of humanity. A belonging, and with that belonging is a sense of comfort, calm, and strength and power. I'll repeat from the article. When my eyes go down from the camera, I'm reading from the screen below the webcam. Quote, a habit is a thought or action that repeats and repeats. Well, of course, everybody knows that, but there's a power to that, and there's a secret to that. It's part of the secret to immortality. Physical form is created and sustained by habit. Physical form is created and sustained by habit. Quote, all of life is made by patterns repeating themselves, such as our planet circling the sun again and again. Earth circling the sun is a repeating habit. And every day and every night and every year, we hope for the sake of our life and existence that that habitual pattern keeps going again and again, repeating itself. Quote, the sun repeats what it's doing all day long for eons, providing heat and light by a nuclear reaction called fusion. And you don't have to know what fusion is. It's when two atoms come together and fuse, and there's an incredible amount of energy released. But the sun is releasing energy every day, every minute, every second, and nanosecond. That's a habit, a pattern of behavior that the sun is repeating again and again. And I suggest, well, it's a scientific fact. All forms of life can be described as habitual patterns of behavior repeating. The sun is repeating its behavior. The moon is repeating its behavior of rotating around the earth. The earth is repeating its behavior of rotating around the sun. Quote, the sun fuses, that's the nuclear fusion reaction. Listen to this. The sun fuses 620 million metric tons of hydrogen into helium. So that huge sun reaction that creates all the energy and light from the sun, we have 620 million metric tons of hydrogen fusing into helium every second of every day, year after year. So every second as you look up into the sky, and don't stare at the sun, but every second that you enjoy the sunlight, that is the sun fusing 620 million metric tons of hydrogen fused into helium a second. That's a fusion nuclear reaction. That's an incredible amount of power. That's an incredible amount of hydrogen fusion reactions. That's a habit, a pattern repeated again and again and again, and it gives us life. Sunlight forms not all, but almost all of life on the planet. The sun goes into the leaves of trees. The sun goes into the leaves of plants through photosynthesis. We eat the plants. Animals eat the leaves, and some of us eat those animals. So, in effect, we're all creatures of the sun. I'm animated, I'm energized today by the food that I've eaten. And that food is sunlight that has come into the food. What the sun does, quote from the article, what the sun does every day, month, and year is a habit, a repetitive habit of fusing that hydrogen into helium. By that habit, the sun gives us life and fuels creation. The sun does that by repetition and habit. And again, a link to this article that I'm reading, the article that I wrote that's on my website blog, a link to that is beneath this video. And if you want to know more, if you're the scientific type, and I don't go into a lot of science at all because most people get confused and aren't as interested in science as I or you may be. If you want more about fusion and how fusion works and how it powers the sun, that's in a link in the article beneath the first part of the article that I just read. So going back to the article, how habits create physical immortality, going back to the article, we're going to look at systems within systems. Life is a physical creation, physical, energetic, and much more creation of habitual patterns, habitual behaviors, of systems within systems. Habits give rise to form. Our habits, our thoughts, our speech and action, and doing Qi Gong, which I teach, our habits give rise to our form. Our habits form us. Over eons, habits evolve creation. Habits give rise to form. So we looked at the habit of the sun, the habit of the earth. Let's think of atoms. Inside every atom that makes up cells of our body is a habit. And I'm reading again from the article, quote, "It is a habit, a repeating action of electrons in orbit with an atom's core." And you don't have to know any of these specifics. It's just understanding that the physical structure of all of creation are habits repeating again and again. And if something is not involved in a habit, it doesn't exist in physical form. There are other ways to exist in physics. But an atom or a molecule and human body are habits in physical form. An atom, real small, a molecule bigger, and a human body, our bodies, are all habits in physical form. And why is this important? Why is this important for the secret to immortality, which is what I'm teaching you and showing you every time you see me or read anything or take a course of ours? What's happening is that we have the ability to change our habits. We have the ability, by changing our habits, to change the habits of all of creation. By changing our habits, we can change death, suffering, and disease as a seeming inevitable outcome. It's not. We can do something very different, which is eternal physical life, freedom, evolution, becoming what we are, understanding and learning without hardship, death, and suffering. I promise you, it's really not necessary, and it's really not that good of a thing, hardship, death, suffering, and disease. If you don't know that, sadly, well, if you live long enough, you'll find out that these things aren't really that great. Quote, repeating energetic patterns sustain our physical body. The repeating energetic patterns of atoms, of electrons encircling atoms as a cloud or a particle, orbiting the nucleus of an atom where there is, if I can remember, a proton and a neutron together. So we have repeating energetic patterns that sustain our physical body. The atoms that make up the elements, and the elements that make up the molecules, and the molecules that make up the cells, and the cells that make up our blood, our bones, and our organ systems. We have a beautiful system of systems within systems of habitual repeating behaviors that create our physical form. And the secret to immortality shows you and teaches you how we can change the habits that aren't having a good effect on us to habits that are having a good effect. We can change habits of thought and behavior that are taking us to suffering and death. We can turn those around to the force of life. We can turn around the force of death, which most of us are heading toward and a part of. We can turn around the force of death and turn it with Qi Gong, with practicing mindfulness for immortality. We can turn it around from the force of death to the force of everlasting life. Understanding habits, quote from the article, quote, headline, understanding habits, quote, to help you better understand habits and get you thinking in a new and different way, there's a list below called Without Habit, and I'm going to read that list to you in a minute. This list may surprise you, the list that I'm going to read you. This list may surprise you, and the list may seem to pivot against the point it's making. It may seem like this list is saying one thing and then another, but that's kind of how life goes. One day things are going this way, another day they're going the opposite way. This list may surprise you. Read the list with a relaxed and open mind, and that's what we're going to do. This presentation, video presentation, is going to be broken up into several parts. So for this part, part one, we're going to read from the list. And what is that list again? To help you better understand habits and get you thinking in a new and different way, I'm reading. There is a list that I'm going to read you now called Without Habit. This list may surprise you and seem to pivot against the point it's making at first, yet there is more to the list I'm about to read. There is a list beneath the list, a list underneath the list. Read the list, follow along as I read it, quote, with a relaxed and open mind. Don't force a meaning or understanding. Read as a meditation with little thought. Most of what I tell you in my writing and my videos, they're not facts to be memorized so much. The facts are actually very simple. By our thinking, by our speech, and by our behavior, we create our bodies of suffering, disease, and death, or of immortality and everlasting life. We're creating this whole event that we're part of by what we're doing. So follow what I do as an inspiration and a motivation to activate your own soul, your eternal being of physicality, eternal being of light, your soul. And I suggest that also has a physical expression in our body, eternal bodies. Here we go. I'm about to read the list, so we're relaxed, we're at ease, our minds are open. And as I read the list, there's a process that's going to start to help you get grounded, strong, and physically immortal. Today, the name of this list is Without Habit. And what does that mean? And I'll talk about that. So there are 5 items on the list. Quote, without habit, there is no form. That's the first one on the list. Without habit, there is no form. Energy has to be actively repeating in a habitual pattern for form to exist. And when we habitually repeat thoughts and feelings, emotions and physical behaviors, consciously or unconsciously, when we give something habit, we're altering the form of our body, mind, and life. Number two, without habit, there is void and emptiness. When there is no habit, when energy, life, and existence and beyond existence, where there are no repeating habits, I'm suggesting there is no void or emptiness. I'm suggesting that was wrong. I'm suggesting there is void and emptiness, not bad void, not bad emptiness, but there simply isn't physical form. Without habit, this is number three. Without habit, there is selfless union with all that is. When I'm free of my habits, at peace and calm, which I'll teach you how to do, when we're free of our habits, we're not reacting to life, we're not running away from something, or we're not fighting something. The fight or flight response. When we're without habit, we are in a natural, powerful union, a belonging with everything that exists and beyond existence, to a greater existence, a greater being, a greater consciousness. It's here and now, but in a sense beyond existence. When we're without habit, which means not reacting to things so much, we all react, we have to stay alive, but there's a balance. When we're not reacting, when we're not fighting too much, but we're in balance. When we're in balance, we feel our natural belonging. We feel our soul, our human power, our ability, our relatedness to all of life in the world. Quote, without habit, we have everything and nothing at one time. You don't have to know what that means. And there really isn't meaning intellectually. Thoughts don't bring you to immortality and the best of yourself. Thoughts are more like a tool that we use. If we start to think that thoughts are the reality of our life, we can get a bit twisted, lost, and uncomfortable. So I'm taking you more and more to your true consciousness, the core of your being. I'm closing my eyes right now to better experience that in myself. As I talk to you, the core of my being has no thought. In a way, the core of my being is all thought, is all belonging, is all powerful, the core of our being, the core of reality, of existence. The core is where I am with the higher power of my understanding that I live by and live with. I suggest you're doing the same, but you may not be aware of it. And a lack of awareness of our perfect, beautiful nature is really what brings about suffering, confusion, death, wrong decisions, accidents. We don't need to go there. We're going towards immortality, towards life, strength, happiness, bliss, understanding, belonging, health, good relationships, on and on and on. Life, I suggest, is meant to be a beautiful, happy place of unending discovery and wonder if we live it right with the right thoughts, speech, and behavior. And I also teach Qi Gong for lasting life and immortality. That's helped me a lot. So we have a list called, quote, without habit. There are 5 items on the list. The last one says, without habit, there is a peace that surpasses understanding. When we're not caught up in habitual behaviors that are jerking us left and right, when we're not reacting to life, running away from something that we're afraid of, or fighting something that we're afraid of, when we're not reacting and involved in this chaos of the world, we naturally calm down and experience what I call a peace that passeth understanding. I'm sure you've heard of that before. I suggest that peace that passeth understanding is yourself. It's you as you are with your higher power, or the God of your understanding, the greater consciousness, the greater existence of all existence. So contemplate that list above. If you've clicked on the link and you're also at my article, look at the list without habit. Read it again and again, but read it as a meditation. Don't try to pull intellectual meaning out of it, because that pulls us away from where we are. It's kind of like trying to find ourselves in intellectual meaning is kind of like going through a toolbox, a mechanic's toolbox, and trying to find that one tool in his box that has the secret to all existence. Ideas are tools, and they don't have the secret to anything. Ideas are just tools we use to get through life, or to do our job, or to get to the store. We use a car or we walk. That's all tool usage. Contemplate the list. I'm going to repeat it very quickly. 1, without habit, there is no form. 2, without habit, there is void and emptiness. 3, without habit, there is selfless union with all that is. 4, without habit, again, we have everything and nothing at one time. 5, without habit, again, without habit, there is a peace that surpasses understanding. I suggest that peace is your soul, as your soul sits with the soul of life and beyond. As our soul is together, you and I, and every soul in this world, as we're together with each other at that soul level, with the soul of creation. Contemplate the list that I've just gone through. Consider each line to be the secret to life or the secret to immortality. Both are the same thing. I suggest we're born to live forever in happiness and peace and comfort without suffering, hardship, death, and disease. That's the meaning to life, the secret to life, and the secret to immortality. Meditate on how your life can be without bad habits. I'm reading from the article. Quote, think of how suffering and death of all kinds can end as we practice new patterns, better patterns of thinking, speaking, and acting. Quote, think of life without bad habits. How would this look, feel, and be? Quote, think of life without bad habits. How would this look? How would a life without bad habits, with goodness, strength, and happiness, how would that look? How would that feel? How would that be? Notice I'm touching my heart. I'm not really trying to. That's just where my hand ends up. I'm speaking now from my heart, from my soul, and that's where I'm taking you, hopefully, to your heart, to your soul, to your core place of power and being. Quote, reading from the article, consider a life where good habits predominate. We don't have to be perfect and do everything good. We're never going to do that, but we have to seek toward progress. The 12 steps, many different 12-step programs talk about this progress, not perfection. And that's what I'm talking about. Eventually, our good habits that we practice again and again will take over our life and predominate our life and our world. If we're practicing good habits every day and they start to take over our life, what would happen? What would that good life and good world look like day to day? Quote, Qi Gong, and I'll have a link to Qi Gong at the bottom of this video too. Qi Gong, a ancient Chinese system of healing, gaining strength, power, ability, immortality. I'm a Qi Gong master of over 20 years, and I've studied and practiced for over 20 years with a Qi Gong grandmaster and traditional Chinese physician from Beijing, China. And everything I do and say comes from that relationship with this man in his own immortality practice. Qigong can be a new and better habit of strength and immortality. And there'll be a link right below this video, and I'm about to end this part 1 of this video. Qigong, again, can be a new and better habit of strength and immortality. And Qigong, the Qigong I teach, is very simple. You can do it standing, sitting, or even in bed, and you can just watch the Qigong video that this link will take you to. You can just watch a Qigong video and benefit. You can also benefit, of course, from listening to a video like this again and again, and I'll be adding more and more every week. You can benefit by reading this blog, and we have an online course called Introduction to Immortality. in a book that I've written called Qi Gong and Spiritual Growth. There will be links to all of those right below this video. This is part 1 on a series of videos about habits that create physical immortality. Stay tuned and see you in the next video.